Hi, I'm Ben with the Shoppy Farm. Welcome back to the Friday Farm Update. That's about, I don't know, a couple of months overdue. We had designs this year on shooting maybe like kind of a mini series where we document our harvest. As is always the case, Mother Nature had other ideas, and we basically have just been consumed with trying to get the crop in at its peak, and the shooting the video has slipped a bit. So this is going to be just a kind of just the facts, like what does harvest mean for us? What do we kind of do this season, and where are we now? Um, Last year we grew 2 strains. This year we grew 16. We grew the 2 that we grew last year because most of our products are created from them. And then a couple of different strains to give us an enlarged toolkit of cannabinoids, so some minor cannabinoids like CBG and CBN, and then to just try some other strains to see how they work in our environment here. As with any natural product, the window when the crop is at its peak is relatively narrow, especially in our climate. In Maine, oh, my phone is talking to me. Uh, anyway, it's a relatively narrow window because, of course, we're in down East Maine. When it starts to get cold, it gets cold quite quickly. So when the plants start to be stressed by the weather and they are at their peak, very quickly they go by. So with 16 different strains, they all react differently to the weather. It has been a little bit of a free-for-all to get everything in, but it has been a relatively successful harvest. A couple of the new strains are excellent. I'm really excited about them, and we will have some products coming out soon built around them, which is really pretty cool. Some of the new strains were pretty much failures, which is not a big surprise. And then a few were, given a different year, might have been more workable. But we did have a very early frost this year, like we did last year, that caused most of the strains to mature a little bit quicker than we thought. So what does that mean basically? So when we harvest for both flour and for biomass. And so the flour is what you would purchase in the cans, what we make the pre-rolls out of. And then when we say biomass, that's basically what we harvest to extract. And the extracted product goes into basically everything else we do, the lotions, the edibles, things like that. It's a different harvest technique for both of those pipelines. We usually will start with the flour, and that is the top few pieces of the plant. Those are taken by hand, and then they go in to our processing facility, and they're trimmed down and then dried. And then actually some of them work in the reverse, depending on the strain. Some of them we cut the branches off, dry the branches, and then trim them. It just depends what seems to work best for that particular strain. And so right now, most of that part is done. And the flour is in a curing phase, which is basically like aging wine or something like that. It's, of course, not that sophisticated or time consuming. But once the flour is in its final state, it's trimmed and dried. It goes into a container and is basically opened for a certain amount of time every day. It's called burping. And that's done, it's between 30 and 60 days typically. And again, it's very strain dependent. So you're just trying to bring out the very best in the flour. And that just takes time, and someone that has a lot of experience with it. Every single container gets looked at every day, gets opened, and basically the air is exchanged inside the vessel, and then it's closed back up and it sits. So that process has been started for most of our flour, which means that we will have new cans of flour and new pre-rolls in that like 1 to 2.5 month time frame. So that is underway, and then the biomass is different. So this year, all of our biomass was hand harvested and hung dry. There was no mechanized drying. We experimented a little bit with that last year with some of the crop, which we never ended up using because it just didn't work very well. So we engineered a little bit of a different hanging system this year, and it worked very well. I'm really happy with the quality of our biomass this year. And so that will soon be extracted and available to go in some of our new products. And we have lots of fun new stuff, which we'll talk about in another video as far as edibles and topicals and things like that that will be available very soon. So that is it's not as time consuming per pound, but of course we harvest a lot of biomass, so it is quite time consuming. Basically the plant gets cut in the field and then transported to the warehouse where it gets strung on lines, and then it sits for 4 or 5 days until it is appropriately dry. And then this year we actually hand pulled all of the flower, all the product to be extracted off of the stem and stalk. It seems particularly time consuming, and it is, but it just results in a better product. So that's the way we did it this year, and I actually think that probably it will be the way that we go forward with this. We've not had very good luck with the other mechanized options. So that's basically where we stand with the product. The fields are starting their recovery basically tomorrow. So the rest of the plant material will be cleared from the fields. It will be piled up and composted over the next couple of years. And then the mulch cover and the irrigation system and all those different things get picked up. And then we use a tool called a speed disc, which is like a disc harrow essentially, to flatten the fields back out. And then we'll cover crop them with a variety of different cover crops. Basically depends on, so we have a 3-year field rotation, and what we cover crop with depends on whether the field was just used, will be used next year, or will be used the following year. We can talk about that a bit more in future videos as well. So that's kind of where we're at. We have lots of work ahead of us, lots of processing. I mean, the harvest it's the end of our real farming. It's the end of really being outside, but it's just the beginning of the creation of the products. So that starts in full force here this week, and we should have more time. It's a little bit more of a 9 to 5. Well, 9 to 5 is inaccurate. Nothing here is 9 to 5. But we are able to work on more of a schedule, which means that we'll have more updates, and we'll get to kind of talk through what happened this season, which we had intended to talk about in more detail as it was happening, and it just wasn't possible given everything that went on. So we'll have more updates. We'll have more drink videos. I'm hopeful that we'll get Chef Andre on here pretty quickly to talk about what he has been doing. He didn't participate as much in harvest this year. I think we nearly killed him last year. So he spent most of harvest time in the kitchen working up some fun new products. So we have lots to talk about, and hopefully we'll get to that very soon. So thank you very much for listening, and we'll be back soon. Thanks.